so far away from the microphone as always. But here I am, anyways. Maybe to distance from this. Can I test now? Pop. Can it can it be tested? Yeah, okay. Okay, it works. I'm satisfied enough with just that. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, also wait. Like this. Okay. So, I forgot kind of to change this. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Don't worry. There it is. Wow. So professional, so incredible, so amazing. No, for real. Um, this is the end of this series. I guess I have nothing else to truly add. I have nothing else to say about this. It's it has been so far quite a complicated story to tell and all of those things. I didn't expect to spend so much time to begin with, so it's quite crazy to see that we have had already like 9 episodes or so. It's still very fun to check and very, very interesting to see that this went for so long. As, as everything, there is a certain point in which there is nothing else to truly invent or truly say that has any meaning to it. It becomes rather a meaningless activity to keep on trying to dig time and time again on the same thing because there are some ideas that do have the potential to be unlimited. I do believe in that side, but at the same time, not this, not something that is so precise or so simply understandable as how is it that somebody in a broad way or in the broadest way possible utilizes their energy, their interest, and their efforts into anything. It's even more once again, if it is something generic, there is a very limited point of exploration for all of that. You cannot. It will be a satisfying thing to go on for 100 hours talking about it, but there isn't that much stuff. You can't keep trying to explain something that can only be felt in some senses or something that can only be experienced through active participation and all of that. So, at the very least, for now, I think we are done. There isn't that much more to add, and there isn't that much more to truly clarify. Sadly, I guess the biggest problem is always you don't know what you don't know, and I don't know exactly what I missed. I don't have a complete recollection of all the things that I wish I could have mentioned, but I didn't because of different reasons. I guess it's always a problematic situation, even more going back to this whole idea of you can talk about whatever you want and you can utilize your energies in whichever way you want. That when trying to portray an idea, you need examples, but at the same time, if the idea has to remain minimally general, something that you can observe, so to speak, in a more free form way, instead of being so constrained by different explanations and whatsoever, your examples cannot be so precise. So, I think that the real biggest problem is there are a lot of things that, if it was possible, they would have a lot more particular cues on them and particular tools to properly identify what was the idea in terms of a guiding explanation, a guiding, once an example. There isn't, at, at the very least in my case, I enjoy it a lot more when I can have a very detailed example that demonstrates what's the theory in some way. I don't I don't get simply because I am trying or simply because I am hearing the words, reading the paragraphs, the idea. In some cases I like to have in my hands an example. And in this case there are not that many that will serve that purpose particularly, so it's quite, I wouldn't simply say depressing, it's simply a tiny mistake of trying to overgeneralize, as it ended up happening in so many ways. But the whole idea, in in some other respects, is not so damaged still, so at the very least it's a minimal compromise that can be done, that can be performed for the sake of explaining things better. And it's a trade-off that I was more than willing to do, I guess. But that's that's one of the really only things I would have missed of this. I guess more preparation, more time is always like the main issue, but at the same time, it doesn't really help in any way or assist with anything to be always wishing that you could have done more. In that sense, I don't I don't see the utility or the usefulness in sitting here and lamenting that it didn't get to be the best piece ever created because of this or because of that. It's in no way something useful. In many respects, I I wish it was. I think everyone would have wished that simply because you spend the next 20 minutes of your life trying to figure out exactly what to do, everything will work out better. But it doesn't work in that way. There are some things like discussing stuff that require you to be exactly on the moment doing it, and it's something so important because it is only when you are in the practice itself that you realize that maybe you're not doing this, maybe you're forgetting this other piece, maybe there is an over focus on this one topic. Not, not matter, yeah, no matter how much you try to practice, there isn't a properly, fully perfected state of your creation in the reality, in the mental realm. It feels a lot better to always battle and win against ideas, but against the facts of reality, it works a lot differently. And just because of that, it's already something funny enough to consider. At least in these cases, there isn't that much to gain from not having said anything at all. It's, if I had to order it in any way, I guess it would have been so much worse to not even give it a try than to have failed in any way if this did. It's better in that sense. It feels a lot better in that sense. And I did I do know that, as always, there are minimal tiny corrections and adjustments that always would have been interesting to perform, but it also is quite impossible to do that to a certain extent. you, at the very least here, we are not in a medium in which you can go back and correct the stuff, even if the main intent with which this is made is always to be later on uploaded and to leave it there, to have that as another piece of work, quote unquote, that is independent. The reality is, it gets recorded as it says the word. It cannot be modified after that, and you cannot at best try to argue. You could have checked, you could have gone back and tried to observe which things could have used some changes, some extra additions, and all of that, but particularly none of this. It was very. I don't know if exhausting is the correct term. It simply is a tiresome process. You need to order what you want to say and what is it that you truly wanna go for. So it becomes truly uninteresting to a certain degree, since you are dealing so much with so many different issues of is is the idea itself even understandable? Is what is being discussed truly in any way something that can be utilized, that can be concrete in reality? Is it anything that in any shape possesses true usefulness? Is it in any manner interesting to try and continue? So it's it's a it's a weird thing, I guess. That's another thing to say. It I didn't even I say it throughout the series a lot. I didn't even expect it to be so long. I never wanted it to be so long. When I started, I wouldn't have believed that it was going to be like it ended up doing, 9 parts long. I would have wished for it to stay simply one or two, I guess. But if you truly try to consider something like this, you realize there are so many areas in which you need to try and speak. There are a lot of things that are related to this, and that you should, at the very least, try your best to mention. It's it's human motivation after all. The real topic is nothing else more than human motivation and the capacity to be creative or the capacity to take risks and all of that. It's it's a complicated topic because it's something incredibly hard to properly explain in many ways, and it keeps unraveling onto itself because there are so many things that are interconnected in so many ways. What's the real point of trying to not have negativity if you don't even have a proper goal? Or what's the real objective of establishing plausible goals if everything else that exists around you doesn't allow you to try and utilize what could be of your efforts in any meaningful way? It's it's a complicated story, but it is still something interesting to explore because in the process of doing so, for anyone who minimally has an interest in properly arriving at anything, once for anyone that has justified enough efforts, the act of doing so is always rewarding. You will always find, at the very least, a minimal, anatomically newer addition to what is the already existing arsenal of tools at your disposal in terms of continuing what you want to do. It's it's complicated, not because it is long. It's complicated because it requires the person to simply sit down and focus on what is it that they might truly want. And I don't know, I always think it is something to rave about in in a certain way that people would prefer to not even give it a second, that people simply lives life in a more reactive way, that discussions of this sort are so inexistent nowadays. It's it is something wonderful, I guess, to be a children and to have childrens around, because you will have found more of this, or in this note of discussions in children. That's the funny thing, that you find in people who are younger and who haven't experienced so much of the negativity of the whole world, so many of these same discussions and so many of these same topics about, yeah, I want to do this and I want to obtain this thing and I have this one dream, and even if it is a dream, I I will try my best to make it a reality, because I simply want it. I simply want to see what could happen if I were to commit myself to doing that. And it's, I think, yeah, it's a pressing thing to be talking about it here and having nothing else to truly compare it to in many ways. Not because you need to have a point of comparison, but rather because there is no real point in quote unquote discussing something when there is nothing else to use as a reference. It's it's very empty. It, if there is anything to truly say that this brought us a regret, is the realization of indeed, and this discussion might as well have, even if it failed, there is no way to know that, because there isn't enough of a discussion in general about it. It's it's very wonderful to see in so many places something along these lines try to appear. It's, I mean, even when you read something like one of the most useful books for this whole topic in the broadest sense possible, even if you were to read some the works of someone like Viktor Franklin, you will still not get anything out of it, because it requires you to be interested and to be engaged in the discussion, and in so many ways that doesn't happen. In so many ways that is not the reality of the world itself in which these types of ideas are discussed. I mean, I guess I can try to minimally fit that here. I remember after so much time having tried to battle with this idea, it was at some point I know I mentioned this guy inside of this series, how you have, as an individual, you have desires and you have interests and you have certain hopes and dreams and all of that, but at the same time, it's a civilization that is focused around a sort of negative shape of all of those things. You aren't truly gifted with the possibility of doing something, or you aren't truly given the chance to express yourself. You're rather obliged to utilize that chance, and you're forced to be the captain of your own ship, so to speak. And in the words of a more proper philosopher, I guess, in the works of somebody like Byung-Chul Han, you can find something along the lines of, and in this society, it's the normalized thing that everybody who doesn't have a sense for what is their particular potential, and somebody who isn't self-exploring themselves always is failing and all of that. It makes sense, on the other hand, this whole discussion might even seem to be exploitative in nature because you are trying to talk about something that so many people are always told about, that is so incessantly remarked by everyone. There isn't any real gain on one hand, but on the other, there isn't a real solution. What's It's very good to be capable of stepping aside for a second and saying, "Wow, yeah," and this isn't the first place in which I heard, if you dream something, you might be capable of accomplishing it. Wow, what a deep discovery that was for the human being. Certainly, I have heard that every single day of my life. I have had people always remind me that I should be trying to work towards anything, and I have had people always trying to discuss such a thing with me in terms of how is it that your potential isn't utilized in any way, and how is it that what you could have done is simply left behind and all of that. It doesn't feel satisfying from that side, but at the same time, it's it's a complicated issue. You cannot truly aspire to make it disappear out of nowhere. Once again, if it were to be a completely societal issue, there is nothing that we can do just from here. If there is no other action that minimally accompanies what happens in this space, that minimally brings the possibility of discussing and furthering what is this whole situation, what is this whole necessity of the human being, it simply remains in this realm and it doesn't feel satisfying enough. But that's bound to happen. How many things are of that very same nature? I mean, it feels good to have said something, but at the same time, if the cost of saying anything was to discover that what in the end you spoke wasn't as minimally good as it could have truly been, what's the satisfaction inside of that? It's an endless loop of judgment inside of that, and it's a complicated thing. You cannot hope that every single thing that gets said by anyone is useful. You cannot hope, even if everything that gets said implying. But I personally know somebody who says so many good things. Okay, let's assume that this person exists. Every single thing that somebody says is good. What's the real point of that? You cannot truly say anything incredibly beneficial in any way. Also, good morning, Crespian. I hope you are doing well. Uh, good morning. It's, even if everything were to be good, even if every single thing that gets talked about and all of that were to be the most realist thing that you have heard, it's really trying to make anything out of that. Words by themselves don't truly carry any value. It's something that, with a handful of minutes of observation, anybody can realize there is no point in discussing any of these things if there is no change, if there is nothing else to truly do or to truly try to put into action. I guess I I remember. I guess I can finally talk more about it in a direct sense. I remember that ever since I started this whole analysis and this whole discussion, I found myself finally starting to have a little bit more of interest in directly participating in the stuff and directly, at the very least, trying, not probably not succeeding. It's impossible to succeed at every single thing that you want. I wish I had that capacity, and I wish I was gifted with the possibility of always succeeding at anything that I had tried, but at the very least, accepting the human factor and accepting that things want to go in the right way, and accepting that the stuff is going to fail, and sometimes even more that it is going to fail, not because of me directly. It's wonderful to realize and to abandon the responsibility of, yeah, everything is in my hands. Sometimes people who is completely oblivious to your existence will make what you're trying to do fail, and that is fine too. It's an amazing possibility to realize that what you want, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to gain, is in some way or another failing, just because nobody can ensure that the efforts and different things will go in the direction that you want them to go. Also, uh, please say hello to my dogs who are right now working. But it's it's wonderful. It's a transformation of the persona, I guess, to try and do anything that is related to efforts, to the particular quality of having an interest, to the particular possibility of having a dream. It's it's a beautiful thing to see that and to even more participate in that as an active actor, not simply as an observer. It's, yeah, I think something that happens more than once, that is to a certain extent the most integrated part of this whole deal, is a little bit of self-censoring. But I mean, at which point the expression is finally understood? With which thing, with which way of saying the same thing can it be understood? I would rather fucking not exist in general than to stop discussing all of these things. It's a flavorful experience, and it is a more than wonderful chance to do what you like and what you wish. It isn't simply something that you say that you hate because it takes so much energy. If it is something that you truly enjoy, you can find the justification for every single other thing that exists. It's incredibly depressing to hear people say, yeah, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to utilize what can be of my energy and stuff. I don't want to do any kind of interesting thing for myself, or I don't want to be part of any incredibly complex group of efforts because it takes so much energy. What's the real point? What's there to gain if nobody does anything that they might truly like? What's the real gain in staying in a completely negative side of the world? It's incredibly devoid of any happiness, of any true meaning, to be doing that instead of, at the very least, crashing against reality at every single instance. It's the discussion of these sort of things, and at the same time, even more obviously, the act themselves of doing what you want that can minimally assist, but to never have anything like this done, and to completely avoid that side of reality, to never accept that indeed, as any other person, you might have an interest on something that you want, a possibility in doing something that you like, a, a capacity to do it. The capacity is so incredibly easy to picture once you try to do something. It's one of the most missed aspects of this whole discussion. You don't need to be reminded every single day that you could achieve great things. And I don't give a single fuck if it is an excuse of, oh no, yeah, I, Even if you were to tell me that, I do not believe it exactly, because I live in a depressing society that reminds me every single day about how impossible it is for me to achieve anything. So I I I have been completely alienated from the possibility of realizing my own potential. No, no. In this case, that doesn't work as an excuse. In this particular case, that isn't an useful thing to say or to stand behind. It is just another excuse for the people who don't want to give it a single try. It's a life completely devoid of any useful thing. It's a completely empty existence. What lies inside of that? I hate whenever I talk with people and I have to hear, oh yeah, life is so tiring and life is so hard to deal with. I simply live like a in a day-to-day basis. I completely hate that. I completely despise when I have to hear people say all of those things. It's it's incredibly negative. But I don't know. It happens. Also, good evening. I think it is Spike. And thanks. I guess thank you for being there. I don't know. It's my quote unquote job to do this, so I should have reached it a lot sooner. I guess that's the reality. But yeah, good evening. I hope you are doing well, Spike. And yeah, I don't know. It's always a complicated thing, a complicated idea or discussion to say, to have to deal with that people, to have to deal with that side of things. Why why the beautiful discussion of why exist? What do you mean why exist? Don't you don't you have the possibility of talking with people? Don't you have the possibility of being in the world, of discussing so many great things with others, of realizing that other people might as well have something wonderful inside of them? It shouldn't be a real discussion. Why? It That's the same feeling that existed ever since I started this whole series. It shouldn't be something that needs to be discussed in any way. It shouldn't be something that needs to be talked about. It should be self evident. The possibility of doing what you like, the chance of existing in a pleasing way, the, the beautiful gift that is to do and to minimally realize all of those ideas and dreams. It shouldn't be something that needs to be for the infinitesimally repeated time yet again talked about. But somehow it needs to be. Somehow the same problem arises. Wow, there isn't something good enough that talks about it in detail, that gives it a proper structure, that gives it an objective structure. You always have to be talking about what is to have any kind of hope, because you don't even know if it is meaningful to have one in a subjective way. You cannot give it a proper objective explanation. Everybody deals with that. How is it that we still don't have an objective, proper explanation about any of those things? But I don't know. It's it doesn't make it something lesser because of that. It doesn't make it something negative because of that. It's simply it's simply a collateral problem that always existed. Even when all of this stops existing, it will remain there. I guess. Uh, yeah, I mean that's the whole point. That's completely the whole point. How is it that you can not have anything to do? How is it that it has become acceptable to not have anything to do? That you can exist in a world in which you don't have a proper justification for anything? That it isn't a problem that you don't have anything. The problem is the next thing that gets said of, wow, life is so complicated, life is so hard. I was never given the possibility to do anything that I truly wanted. Is it that hard of a realization to try to minimally give it a one go, to minimally be for 1 second in this world, in the whole comparison of, wow, your life compared to the whole existence of humanity is a speck of dust. Okay, if you can see it in that way, at the very least, if you are so negative in that sense, is it so hard for that very same speck of dust to give a minimal percentage of it, to try and see if there is anything satisfying in existence for it, even if you were to be nothing in the whole sum of what is the, oh wow, so grandiose idea of the human species or whatever. It should be evident that there is something satisfying, that there is something worth pursuing. It shouldn't be something of, what? There is nothing interesting to do in life. You're only assuming stuff. What? There are so many things that we have yet to talk about. There is there is not enough time for any single human to discover everything that there is yet to discuss, that there is yet to say. It's it's a beautiful world, but it's not something that gets accepted, that is correct to say. It's incredibly depressing in that side once again, and you end up coming with a rationalization of, oh well, yeah, and the moment in which you try to assume such a narrative is because the whole system has negatively affected you to keep justifying every single bad thing. And I don't know, man. I don't know. It's such a nice world. It's so bad to see it negated simply because of ideas yet again. This is also a shortcut. Certainly, it is a shortcut. I mean, it's wonderful because in the realm of self exploration, and in the realm of what is it, self help and all of that, it's I remember I heard it very recently that the whole thing of self self help and all of that is nothing more similar than masturbation, really, because in the end many people use it in that way. You're not truly working on anything, you're simply quote unquote working what you might do, what you might be, because there is nothing else to do in your life. There is nothing else to truly be, and there is nothing else that you can truly aspire to, that you need to minimally construct what you are. It's this is in the end, this is nothing. There is the real thing to do in life is what the person can identify as meaningful. But I cannot give you my meaning. I cannot impose what I say that is necessary. I it is the acceptance of your goal, your subjective goal, as a reality of not every single person will be interested in what I want. Not every single person needs to give a single fuck about what I want, because everybody has the possibility of working what they want. And that's the interesting part. I mean, it is a problem. It isn't directly a problem. It's just another side of the coin. But yeah. In that way, it's like that. assuming this stuff is the real problem. Sometimes the problem isn't the real one, but rather the anxiety about something that could happen. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens the way it happens. Then you will be happy. I mean, yeah. I don't know. It's such a negative discussion, this whole thing of, yeah, you also need to be always trying your best and trying to arrange every single thing and trying to do so much of what you want in accordance to what you can see mentally. It's it's incredibly deceitful to say that the world, in the biggest sense of the word itself, the whole society around you doesn't give a single fuck about who you are, about what you want, about what you are trying to do or what you are trying to accomplish, or any particular problem that you might be trying to pinpoint. Whatever thing that you are doing, the whole mass of society doesn't have the possibility of caring. It is an amorphous, unconscious thing. Nobody has the possibility of being gifted the interest of the whole world. Yet the discussion becomes somehow, yeah, you should be trying to do your best to have everyone agree with you. You should be trying to do something that everybody likes. You should be you should become the perfect model for a world that needs people like you. And do you believe that the people who make up this same world even know what they want? It's wonderful to discuss with. I mean, not old people. Nowadays, 70 isn't really old. With people who are of that age and hear them say, yeah, I don't have anything else to deal with this society. I can retire and I can stop aspiring in any way. I can simply abandon what was my responsibility. I can stop being part of this so tiresome world. It's such a disservice in so many ways. It's such a negative way of existing to hear all of that. It's obviously having a proper morale about what you want to do and what you might want to accomplish is complicated. If everything else around you is arranged in such a way that everyone sounds, when you properly analyze what they are saying, like they carry some sort of depression or something like that, it's a minimal act of observation, but a proper one to see that every single person is to a certain extent alienated from themselves. It's the realization of, yeah, I cannot accomplish anything. No, it isn't that you cannot accomplish anything. You're not even interested in doing anything that you might truly want. It's the endless problem of saying, yeah, I want to do this, but if I were to try this particular thing that I want, every other negative system of the world will work against me. Is it that impossible to have any achievable dream? Is it that physically incapable of being realized activity to try and aspire for anything minimally observable in reality? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't in any particular way be of that nature. Yet somehow we are still here talking about all of that, and we are still here trying to give it another explanation and give it another meaning and another sense and another shape of the same thing. It's it's disappointing that we are still in this place in that sense, but at the same time there isn't anything really else that can be done about it. People are still, the moment in which a proper structure for that appears is the moment in which the idea of society gets completely discarded, at the very least the present one, but that whole discussion out of nowhere is revolutionary. You're being an overly reactive person when you say something like that. I don't think so. Would that be an exaggerated fear of fucking around and therefore finding out nothing? Yeah, I mean, probably. It can be a proper analogy, I think so, yeah. There are so many ways in which people don't even try. I, I, I love hearing people say, yeah, I had this one dream, I had this one interest, I wanted to do this one thing, I wanted to give this particular activity a go, but what if? I don't give a single fuck about the what if. What if you fucking die tomorrow? Why can't you consider that instead? Why are you considering something so stupid about, wow, one person? What if one person says something bad about what I am trying to? Wow, what an incredibly useful perspective to have. You cannot realize how incredibly fragile your own existence is, but out of nowhere, you're overwhelmed by the possibility of one single individual saying something bad. That's more than enough to bring anybody down. You cannot try to continue with the real original idea. You cannot fuck around even for a single bit to try and see what you can find out. You cannot be bothered to that. At which point is it that the person cannot recognize how incredibly harmful they are being to themselves? It's it's a whole world of people like that. It's I don't know. I will probably say, at the very least, from the people that I know, 90%, 95%. I don't want to go with the overused expression of 99, but I don't know. People don't take any single kind of risk. I at the same time, it sounds bad because it is a direct attack on something else. But this whole idea of, yeah, you shouldn't put your all of your eggs in a single basket. What? You don't know how important it is to have any kind of hope at the very least. What if you were to find something motivating enough that you can dedicate your whole life to it? What if you were to be so enthralled with what you want that you can finally say, even if it is one thing, I am satisfied with that. It's a complete disservice to abandon your possibility of being minimally made happy with the world, to say, yeah, you need to keep watering down all of your interest, and you need to keep watering down all of the things that you have and all of the things that you might be, because it could be dangerous. Every single fucking thing in life is dangerous. At which point do you realize that? When you have 50, when you have 80 years, when you did nothing of true value, when you find yourself depressed because you never accomplished anything, when you're dealing with a major sign of complete negativity, at which point do you realize that every single thing is complicated? There is no real point in saying, oh yeah, this is complicated. Every single thing is complicated. But what matters is the value behind it, the potential behind any single action, not the risk. Anything is risky. The best thing, I remember the quote of, even doing nothing is risky. It's it's such a beautiful world, tainted by so many ideas of, yeah, it's fine to stay in bed and do nothing. It's fine to stay in bed or to stay in your home and accomplish nothing. It's fine to have no true goal, no true desire, no true aspiration. It's fine to do nothing with your life, because if there is any regret that might come, it will do so in the future, not right now. So, at least for now, you can do nothing, and that's okay. No, it's completely wrong. I don't like it. And when I have the possibility of talking that with other people, no. I don't give a single fuck about that. It's boring. It's incredibly boring to deal with that. It's self evident the loop of, wow, you do nothing. Regrets comes, and after that, you have not only to deal with having done nothing for a certain time, you also have to deal with the regret of that nothingness. It's it's utterly meaningless in so many ways. It's so much of a non-compromise. It's so much of, yeah, I might have done something wonderful in this world, but I do not want to minimally try. I do not want to minimally give a bit of myself for that. I do not want to sacrifice even a piece of what could be my own peace, my own safety of mind, because it might be dangerous. It's it's so meaningless in so many ways, and I don't know. I think if the point is to be harsh, there are even harsher things that can be done, that can be said in that sense. But I guess I don't know. Probably after like half an hour of screaming at this point, it's that particular point gets across. Yeah, it's tiresome. It's simply tiresome to say, you know, you could have done something great and try to explain it with yet another iteration of the same words to people who don't listen, to a world who doesn't care, to a society that no matter how much you try to demonstrate that anybody can do something, has no possibility of achieving that. So I don't know. I think simply at some point the individual realizes or has the possibility of minimally working under things. But until that happens, it's just all the same thing. The continuous loop of, oh yeah, I could have done so many great things. I could have helped in so many ways. And what about the possibilities that you're not taking advantage of right now, in this moment? Not the past. It's okay. Not that you need to completely discard the past. Okay, you failed. You're a complete failure once you look at your past. What about right now? The present. What's the importance that you can have in the present? What's the project that you can have from here on to the future? What's everything that is yet to come? Not every single piece of your failed history. What's everything else that can be, that could be, that might be, that you want it to be? What about all of those things? It's so boring in so many ways. It's so stressing to keep talking about all of those things because it doesn't disappear. The complex in society of, yeah, I cannot truly do anything that I want. It takes so much time. There is something that everybody has, and that is time. There is something so wonderful about being young, and every single day we are making more and more advances towards existing more. The, the dream of reaching a never ending life is nearer every single day. Yet the biggest problem so far is time. There are so many ways in which, even with one day of effort, something can be obtained, something can be done, something can be gained. And the whole discussion is still, yeah, I might not accomplish what I want. I might not gain exactly today, the day that I have figured what I wish for me, for my life, I might not have it in my hands. And that is bad. I don't know. It's complicated. It's unavoidably complicated. And that's why I think I said it at this point already. There are so many things that it's impossible to cover. There are so many sides. It will be wonderful to have the possibility of detailing every single argument that could exist. Those I those discussions with family members of, yeah, I want to do something, and somebody who you thought was close to you saying something that goes completely against your nature, that goes completely against what you want. The people that you have around you that can also be out of nowhere a problem. The reasons in which something might be negated from outside, or the ways in which even oneself can out of nowhere, simply because you are ignoring what could be, simply because you let your defenses down, you find yourself in proper terms removing what could be your chances, your potential, out of nowhere back in that hole of saying, yeah, you might not accomplish what you want. You might not get what you are doing. You should simply stop doing what you want. You should simply abandon all hopes and all interests that you have. It's meaningless for you, and there is nothing to gain if you keep on doing it, because everyone realizes that what you are trying to go for is overly complicated, is too dreamy, is too hard to accomplish in reality. Your hopes are too high, or whichever kind of similar argument that is only negative and self restraining that anybody can come up with. But it cannot be done. I wish I could, but it cannot be done. There are too many of those, and there are too many problems. But even with that, if even with all of those existing, the person can minimally commit for a second and do something meaningful. That's everything, I think. That's everything, and that's more than satisfying. That's more than meaningful at that point, I guess. But it's such a weird story to talk about. It's like the realization itself of, okay, I can do something. But what about everyone else who completely has abandoned themselves? Certainly, once you look back, you will find out all of those instances of somebody completely negating that potential. It's it's something wonderful to see how many amazing things anybody can accomplish. Yet out of nowhere, the common message is, no, yeah, only selected few individuals can do something nice. It doesn't work that way. It never did work that way. It's a lot more, as long as you can try, as long as you can minimally be best in what you are doing, you will find some degree of success. It's it's such a complicated story. It's such a complicated world, I guess. But at the same time, I guess it makes it better. It's a little bit more interesting to see around and to see that even when you believe that you have it good for yourself, there are so many people still having a hard time. But there is something that can be done. There is something that might be performed in order to assist, and that way something can be changed, and that way one day more can exist in this world instead of having one nightmare more living. I guess it's such a complicated story. but at the same time, not such a hard one, not such an impossible one to deal with. It's it's just the act of existing with a proper, satisfactory explanation as to why you exist, not this constant, meaningless existence. It's so it's so boring to talk with people about what's the meaning of life? What do you mean? What's the meaning? Haven't you already found one? What are you doing? You have. How old are you? Are you 20? Are you 30? Are you 40? Are you 50? What do you mean that you don't understand what's the meaning of your own life? What do you mean when you say that you don't have a proper justification? It's it's empty, but at the same time, at the very least, at the very least, having found one that for oneself defines it meaningfully is satisfying. There are more than enough examples of people who live out there who haven't even given 1 second of their life to such a consideration. That comparison isn't the best thing ever, but if you stand aside for one instant and see that, yeah, compared to that people, you're infinitely better. Compared to somebody who every single day has to drown that curiosity of why the fuck am I still alive? What am I doing that justifies my life right now? What am I trying to achieve that justifies every other single negative thing that I bring to this world? Compared to that people, having something minimally meaningful is 1,000 times better compared to having to deal constantly with the doubts and with the problems that arise from never thinking about life. I prefer that 1,000 times. I prefer that 1,000,000 times. It's so much better to having spent that time minimally considering what is worth it and what is in any way useful. What is the proper, yet again, what is the proper reason behind any human effort that I am exerting? All of that is so much more than the emptiness that exists on the other side, I guess. But yeah, I guess that was the whole point of this, basically. To try and, yet again, with different words, talk about the same ideas always. Something that feels minimally good, an existence that is minimally satisfying, something that isn't as painful and that isn't as negative. That was the whole point of this whole discussion. And I don't know, was it achieved? Did it fail? I have no idea. And that's, I guess, part of the process is still that wonderful side of detachment. Because no matter what you do, you cannot control the reaction of other people. No matter how much effort you put into something, you cannot control how people will interpret what you are saying, who you might be talking about which ideas are you exactly referring, in which context are you operating, if you are even taking into consideration your context or not. Any of those things are completely impossible to alter. So, with enough time, one learns to detach from all of those anxiety-inducing questions of how will people react to what I'm saying? How will people interpret what's the message? Is the message good? Is what I'm trying to talk about positive? is what I am striving for. Meaningful for others is this collection of words enough? You never know. You will never know. So as long as you try your best and you find it satisfying enough, that can be enough. Sometimes people are going to define what is good. Some other times people in the most negative way, I guess, people are stupid also. Not you cannot expect everyone to be completely willing to what you say or what you hope or what you want. It would be wonderful, but it doesn't happen. It never happens in that way. So yeah, it's that's everything. It's it's a wonderful existence, but at the same time, it's a more complicated one. So yeah, good luck out there in the world, and I hope certainly in any way anybody can have any sort of true justification for their efforts. That was the whole objective of this. But yeah, my voice got completely cooked. I cannot keep going. Thanks for everything as always. It has been a nice day. What will be the next topic? I have no idea. But at the very least, this very short list of ideas revolving around human efforts has been completed. So yeah, we will see what is the next stopping point. What is the next stop, I guess. But until next time, stay safe. Thank you. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. I guess. Good luck. Touch some grass. Drink some water. Have some nice sleep. Enjoy life. It's it's a fragile thing. Enjoy it while it lasts, I guess. Thank you. Thank you for all. Have a good night. Have a good day. Have a good evening. Have a good one.